questions? Alright, so here we just set it up the same way, and if you already did this, just check your work. So AB is 3x minus 1, BC is 13, the whole thing is 6x. How do we set up an equation with that? What did you say?
I did 3x minus 1 plus 13 equals 6x.
Perfect. And so all you do is you just add the two parts to equal the whole. And so I sometimes tell people to write it up here. Sometimes you can just write it off to the side like this. And then we solve. So 3x plus 12 equals 6x minus 3x. To get 12 equals 3x. Divide by 3 to get x equals 4. Am I finished with the problem? No, because now it wants me to plug it back in and find all three parts, right? So AB becomes what when we plug that in? Yeah, so we plug the 4 in, we get 11. So 12 minus 1. BC they already gave us, that's still 13. And what is AC? And we can get that by plugging in the 4 right here. Or we just add 11 plus 13, make sure it's 24. Do you guys remember learning this before, or is this new? Okay, so this is new. There's another line like this, geometry, but you were able to figure out the first few because it's kind of common sense, right? So midpoint, have you learned midpoint before? No, that's new also. Midpoint's almost the same thing, except we have this definition that midpoint is exactly half. The word bisect means it cuts in half. And so here, sometimes they'll give us just one part, and by definition, we know that the other part's the same. So it gives us the definition. B is the midpoint. So if AC is 17, what's BC? I heard someone say it. 17, same thing, right? So, because the definition is exactly the same. So BC equals 17. If AB is 4, okay. So when they give us the definition that B is the midpoint, B is exactly half. So if half equals 17, what does my other half equal? 17. So that's when we're dealing with.
AC is the whole thing. How is BC half?
Did I do it wrong? Thank you, guys. I did it wrong. Okay, what should I do instead?
It should be 17 divided by 2,
Yeah.
and then it would be 8.5.
Yeah, that's not half. That is the whole. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so 17 divided by 2, which equals, if we're doing decimals, anyone knows that equals? 8.5. And sometimes we leave things in fraction form, sometimes it asks for decimals, so it just depends on the worksheet you're doing. Okay, so now it gave us half and asks us to find the whole. So let's finish this one, then I'll take questions. So if I have half, if AB is half, what's my whole? So AC equals 8. Alright, so here we have an equation we're going to have to write. So if I have A, B, and C, and again I have the definition of AB is half, this is my whole. So if this is 4x plus 1, I know my whole is 5x plus 20. What do I have to add here before I can write an equation? Yeah, so I can either write 4x plus 1 again here because halves have to equal each other, so I just write it half. Or some people find it easier to just write 2 halves. 2 halves equals the whole. And so they can just recognize 2 times 4x plus 1 equals the 5x plus 20. So you just choose what's easier for you to write it out this way. or to write it out this way. We just have to make sure 2 halves equals the whole, 1 half never equals the whole. And so either way, we go ahead and solve. Here we would distribute 8x plus 2 equals 5x plus 20. And subtract 2 to get 8x equals 5x plus 18. Minus 5x to get 3x equals 18. And x equals 6. If I'd done it this way, I would have just combined my like terms first to get 8x plus 2 equals 5x plus 20. And then solved it out the same way. Am I finished? No, it asked me to find BC. So if I'm going to find BC, I plug it back, my 6 back into the x right here. So 4 times 6 plus 1 equals what? 25. All right. Questions on that before we go to the next page? So when you get it, go ahead and flip over to your next page.
Wait.
Mr. Whiting? Okay, actually the next page is a you try one, so we're going to take like 2 minutes, see how far you can get on the next problem on your own. Alright, so hopefully you got something about like this. How many people got it to y equals 2? Oh yes, pretty much everyone. How many people is B a bisector? Yes, so how do we determine if B is a bisector? You plug it in. So bisector means equal halves. So we'd plug it in here, plug it in here. That gives me 4 plus 6, which is 10. This gives me 2 plus 8, which is 10. So, yes, it's a bisector. So there's just that extra step from what you already did in the warm-up. All right, the next one's just a little bit different in that we have a ratio. And so when we have a ratio, any ideas how we might set that one up? So if I have AD and I have 3 parts, so I'm just going to divide it into 3 parts. And so this is B, this is C. I could choose other letters, but that's what I'm doing. And so I'm going to, when I use ratio, I'm going to use x to represent the unknown. And I just have x, 3x, and 2x. So when you see the word ratio, just put an x beside whatever numbers they give you to help you solve it. And then my endpoints, I'm on a number line now, so -2 and 10. So first thing I need to do is figure out how long is this entire thing. So between -2 and 10, how long is that? 12. And then I just add my plus signs and write my equation, just like I've been doing. So x plus 3x plus 2x equals 12. 6x equals 12. X equals 2. And then it wants me to find the length of each segment, and so I just plug it back in to get 2. 3 times 2 is 6. And 2 times 2 is 4. So just the important thing to remember there are plugging in my ratios with an x. So go ahead and try. The next one is one that you get to try to do. So we're going to pause for 2 minutes again. Okay, so hopefully you're at least able to set up your number line A and B to an 8 in between. I didn't show you guys last time, but the actual distance formula is subtract your numbers and make them positive. So that's how I get the distance. Yeah, you want to grab the door? Thank you. If you need the formula, if you can't figure out what that is. And then when you see that word ratio, remember we're adding x to it. So we have to have 2x and 1x. And so that's how I set this up. So now my equation is just 2x plus 1x equals 6. To get 3x equals 6. I'm not sure. Divide by 3 to get x equals 2. Is that, and it did tell me point P was in the middle. Is that what it asked me to find?
No.
No, what did it ask me to find this time?
The coordinate of point P.
So if I'm starting at 2, and then this side is 2 times 2, which is 4. This side is 2 times 1, which is 2. What's my coordinate of point P?
6.
Mm-hmm. And so those of you, if you didn't get that on your own, it's just 2 plus the 4 equals 6. Or 8 minus the 2 equals 6. So once you have all that, flip to the next page. And this is one reason we record it. So if I'm going a little fast for you, you can come back and look at it at the video. All right. This one. All right, class. One talker. Okay. So this one has, you've probably seen this before. It was on your formula sheet for Algebra 1. It's just plugging the points into that coordinate plane points. And so all we have to do is plug it in. So this is x1, y1, x2, y2. And so we add our x's, divide by 2, add our y's, and divide by 2. And so that gives me negative 4 over 2, 8 over 2, which becomes negative 2 and 4. It's the formula. So we always do, when we're finding midpoint, we always add them up, divide by 2. That's the way to find midpoint. And so then our next one, negative 2 plus 10, divide by 2. 7 plus negative 3, divide by 2. Gives us 6 over 2, 4 over 2. So 3 and 2. Yes, it would absolutely be 8. Thank you. And my whiteout is not working, so I'll scribble it out. Of course I can mess that up. I have to see if you're awake and paying attention. See, a good teacher plans lots of mistakes in there. I make enough mistakes that I don't have to plan them.
No, that means you don't know it.
Okay. All right. Next one. What's a little bit different about about these next two?
You know how to graph?
Oh, they don't have the endpoint.
Yeah.
They have an endpoint and one midpoint.
So this one, it gives you the midpoint. They're still really easy. You just have to make sure you're watching those directions. And so here I have x1, y1, and I have my x midpoint, y midpoint. And so I have to set up an equation. I have the same thing of x1 plus x2 divided by 2 equals the midpoint of x. And so now I'm just going to plug the two numbers I have into there and then do it again for the y's. And so if I have x1 is 7 plus x2 divided by 2 equals my midpoint, which is 1.
We got